So Ken, you first came to Camp Deerpark as summer camp director, and that was an extension of your work with youth in the city. So how is camp important to that ministry?
One of the things that I saw when I first came to New York City was just sort of a lack of leadership opportunities and a lack of leaders being trained up. And I always saw Camp Deerpark as the place where leaders could be trained. And I realized soon after I came to New York City that I had learned so much on the farm, just physical stuff that I'd learned on the farm that I took for granted. And I always thought Camp Deerpark is the farm where young people learn leadership skills and leadership character. And so I always used Camp Deerpark. So I was the summer camp director while I was also the citywide youth pastor. And I always used Camp Deerpark as the place where we could train leaders. And I got to say, Hyacinth Stevens was a partner in that. She was one of the people who was a young person who experienced that. She was a young person who grew in her leadership. But then as she was growing, she saw the value of that. And then also she helped grow leaders. And then Selma would be another person who experienced it and then helped to grow leaders. Taliba would be another one. Kevin was another. So they experienced leadership and they were able to sort of flex their leadership skills and muscles at camp, and then were able to train others. And so when you're talking about youth ministry in the city and Camp Deerpark, I've always seen it as being the farm where leaders grow.
That's really interesting, and it's interesting on another level for me because this was a place where your leadership grew, and you went from summer camp director and citywide youth minister to then executive director of the organization. So what was that experience like?
Yeah. I was just with Dale Stolzfus a couple weeks ago, and I said, Dale, I've been in over my head for 40 years. I was a farm kid that came to New York, and I was told, you're now the teacher assistant at the Head Start. I was in over my head. And then I was asked to be the citywide youth director, and I was way in over my head. And then asked to be the summer camp director. I was way over my head. And then asked to be the executive director. And I wanted that job. That wasn't like I was asked to do that. I wanted that job. And I thought I could do it well. And for about 10 minutes, I thought I knew what I was doing, and then realized I'm again way in over my head. And then we finally kind of get things figured out, and then we do a capital campaign, and again, I'm way in over my head. And so there's this passage of scripture that I have hung on to my whole life, is that in our weakness, God is strong. And I know sometimes I portray confidence, but I have felt like I'm in over my head. And I felt like in my weakness, God has to be strong, because I don't see any other way we're going to do this.
When you first became executive director, what was your vision for camp and how did that evolve?
I wanted to continue hospitality. I had experienced hospitality as a guest here, bringing young people up. I'd experienced that, and I wanted that to continue. Marion Souter did a great job of setting a standard for hospitality. Marion used to get up on Sunday morning early and make homemade donuts for the youth for our youth retreat. I mean, like this sense of hospitality was so strong with her. But then a friend of mine, Byron Brenneman, was really good at business. And I asked him, I said, Byron, what's the key to this ministry? What do you see here? He said, you have to host more than one group at a time. And so from a business standpoint, I really wanted to work at getting a second meeting room and hosting more than one group. Now we host 4 groups at a time. But back when I first started, we only hosted one group at a time.
It's interesting to me when we first started, you were talking about how, like on the farm, you do a lot of physical things, and it develops your character, and that's a great secret of leadership. Sometimes we invest too much effort trying to develop people's character directly rather than create experiences that require them to have character, and then it grows. And you're also just talking about developing the business model of camp, which is kind of a nuts and bolts conversation, but doing that created room for God to do some amazing things. So what are some remarkable or significant things that you've seen God do?
I think this is going way back to when I was the program director. One of the most amazing things that I ever saw God do was we had brought the praise ensemble, which was Ponzella Peterson and Eustace Johnson and their group, and they put scripture to music, and they just basically just sang scripture, but they set it to like really beautiful music. And we invited them to come up and give a concert, and they sang for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. And at the end of their time singing, kids just started, these were 13 and 14-year-olds, just started walking down to the stage and kneeling in front of the stage and just calling out to God. And it was just this amazing revival. And they just continued on, and counselors were praying with them. And it was just an amazing revival that came out of just singing scripture. And then the band stopped playing, and we just started praying with people, and it continued. Finally, we said it's time to go to bed, and then we continued the next day. I think that was the one time when I saw God just move in just an amazing, amazing way at camp with young people.
Let's turn the conversation a little bit to the experience of you and your family. How have you and your family been blessed by camp?
Yeah, I mean, we've been here a long time, and everybody says, wow, Ken, you've been here a long time. But we were here for 28 years because it was good for our family. Being here was really good for our family. I grew up on a farm, and I grew up in a setting where my dad was home for lunch every day. And we worked hard, but we were together. And for me to be able to have my 6 children grow up in a place where we worked hard, but we were together.
So, last question. How do you feel about this transition?
This is a good transition. We are ready to leave. It's going to be hard, but we're ready. We're at peace. And we feel completely at peace about the team that's in place. I feel very good about the team that's in place. I think you, Kevin, Ashley, the Camp Deerpark is in really good hands, and we'll move forward. I think we're at a spot where, it's going to take a little bit to kind of get your feet under everyone, kind of figure out what you're doing. But then I think we're ready for another huge growth time. I'm not just saying this. I think we have better leadership now. I think we upped our game. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Ken, you did such a good job. I had a lot of limitations, and I think we're going to do better. I think we're taking a step up.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Ken, and
Thanks.
Thank you for your service here at camp.
Thanks.